let me know when we're ready to begin. Oh, you have it up. That's great.
Yep.
Good.
All right, you're in. Welcome.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is Julie Haddon. I'm the board president, and we are greatly appreciative that there are some visitors here this evening, because this is our first time out of the gate with a Zoom board meeting, but I think we're all recognizing now that we're having to do things very differently in our lives to maintain our safety and our health, and the safety and the health of our community, and certainly our children. So I thank you for your willingness to participate. Just a couple of announcements before we get started. The advisement from the State Superintendent of Schools is that our board meetings will fall under his direction, which is to make sure that we are compliant with the Open Public Meetings Act, and we are doing so by holding this meeting. But this is essentially the same format that we will follow in April when we have our meeting in April. We will have one business meeting only in April, and it's the regularly scheduled meeting in April. We will not have a workshop. If you have comments or things that you would like addressed or answered, please type them in the chat box or send them on an email to the site that was provided on the agenda link, and we'd be happy to have staff address them at that time. But our meetings are designed to take care of the general business of the school district, which you will see this evening is simply approval of our consent agenda, including payroll, personnel, and some business items that we need to take care of. So with that, I'm hoping everybody is well and safe and continuing to practice our social distancing. Whidbey Island is certainly a very different place this last couple of weeks. I also want to thank our staff and our community for stepping up so eagerly to embrace these changes that we've had to deal with so quickly. I was heartened to read in the letter from the superintendent this afternoon that we've served 500 meals to kids in the last 3 days. That's tremendous. And our instructional strategies and instructional practices are beginning to take off. Teachers are reaching out to kids, and we're beginning to make some adjustments to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for our kids under these difficult circumstances. So I thank you everybody for your patience and your understanding as we all go through this tough time of adjustment. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. And is there approval to approve the agenda for this evening? A motion to approve the agenda? Brooke, so moved. You can unmute yourself just as you would in a regular board meeting.
There we go.
Okay. So do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, moved and approved. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? Oh, that was the approval of the agenda and minutes. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we do not have any items removed from the consent agenda. We do not have public comments at this point. We do have a chat, and I will look back at that in just a minute. New business action, approval of board resolution number 644, resolution of emergency and suspension of policy. Dr. Mocha, would you give us a summary on the importance of this, please?
Certainly. This came from WSDA to all school boards and all districts, and it's basically indicating that the board recognizes that it's not going to be able to meet regularly and handle business as it regularly would. And it provides the superintendent with the discretion to follow the OSPI guidance that comes out and the guidance from the governor that comes out without requiring us to meet with the board. It also deals with if there are any emergency purchases that have to be done because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It provides that opportunity to make those purchases. It essentially allows us to make decisions around emergency leave for people, and so on. It suspends normal policy. So for example, if somebody needs to go out on leave because of their own personal circumstances based on this, it's not required that I get board action to approve that leave. I'd be able to provide that leave based on the guidance from OSPI and the governor and the changes that are already made. Typically, when there are changes in law, the board would have to meet and resolve it in their own policy. So this basically allows that business to go on in the event that we can't meet as a board and so on.
I think it also protects the district in the event that you have board members who are ill and unable to perform their duties. So there's another reason to have this in place. Do I have a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Okay, I'll second it.
Any discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, Christy, going to move this on. We had a comment about how many people can be on this webinar, and I don't know exactly, but I can tell you that I've been on many, many Zoom meetings where it's way over 100. Way over.
Right now, we are listed as having 52 participants.
Okay. All right. Okay. We are on financial and enrollment report. Dan?
Yeah, good evening. So this is our report as of the end of February. And I've changed the format a little bit in hopes that it would make it simpler for you and the community to understand what we're doing, kind of more of a visual graphic to it rather than what we've been doing. So the first screen is actually enrollment. And the way you can read it is the students by grade is the year-to-date average. So we average September through March, and if you look at kindergarten, they're roughly 95, that's the average. The one in the middle shows you where we currently are as of March 1st and what our budgeted amount is. So quickly you can tell that we had budgeted 1237, we're at 1258, we're actually above budget. The student FTE by month is just the actual count that we submit to OSPI for funding purposes each month of the current school year. The three screens in the bottom are special education, our CTE program, and the Running Start program. Give you an idea of the changes that we see throughout the year in those particular programs. So if you have any questions as I go through this, be sure and stop me, otherwise I'll roll through. The part of the intent of this is try to make this clearer so it can be a quicker presentation. We don't have to spend as much time on it. There's still a lot of numbers at the end of this thing for people who like to look at specifics and multi-year comparisons and those types of things. Next. Okay. So the far left is where we are in our fiscal year. We're halfway through, which is February. Our revenues running about 48%, $10,221,000. So you would hope that your revenue is similar to where we are in the current year. And then just a comparison with the last couple years, year to date, you can see that our revenue is down about 252,000. Again, that's a direct result of the change in the levy lid and the amount that we can collect and how we collect it and that type of thing. The lower left corner is just our revenue by month comparison this year, which is a black line, to our revenue collection last year. Again, if we look at that, it's very similar. Our revenue really hasn't gone up in our normal months through apportionment, but it has dropped because of the levy collection. And on the right, it's just a breakdown of where the funds come from. Our local levy, our local support that we generate in the buildings, the state money, and the federal money. Next. This is an expenditure dashboard. So we have payroll in the far left corner, and we are about at 50%, which is where we should be this time of the year, almost $8.8 million. The one in the middle, the non-employee costs, again, that's supplies, services, utilities, et cetera, about 1.2 million. And you can see that we are substantially below that 50% mark. This is an area moving forward where we'll probably see some savings this year. And then our total expenditures, and this is the amount that we've actually spent year to date, and it's about almost $10 million, but it's 48%. So again, it's right where we want it to be, being that we're halfway through our fiscal year. The bottom left is just a payroll comparison this year to previous years, and you can see, that it continues to go up, even though not anywhere near what it was in the change last year. The center is the breakdown, what we refer to as object codes, salaries, benefits, supplies, services, travel. And on the far right is the non-employee costs, the MSOCs. You can see that this year we're actually $100,000 down from where we were last year in that particular category. Next. This one is expenditures with encumbrances. And to remind you, an encumbrance is things that we know we will have to pay, whether it be salary contracts or things we've ordered on purchase orders and we receive but actually haven't made payment for, or we have a purchase order in place, we know we're going to buy it, but we haven't actually received it. So the far left is payroll, and it's about 98%. We do encumber all our salaries. So the only thing that would show up in there would be additional time, which I don't anticipate a lot of that in our current situation. The non-employee costs, we're about 68% of the way through our budget there, so we still have capacity. And our total expenditures, all categories with encumbrances, about $19,770,000 is about 92%. So it's well within where we'd expect to be this time of the year. The lower left, monthly expenditures, is just a look at what we actually spend on a monthly basis, the red line being the current year. And with the exception of December, because of the non-payment for medical, the change to SEB, we're a little bit above where we were last year, pretty consistently about the same every month. Revenue versus expenditure just shows you what our revenue is, and it's fairly flat. It's that red line that goes through, but our revenue is not quite regular. We have our levy collection in October that pops it up, and then through the rest of the year, we have different percentages that we receive from OSPI. Some months it's 12%, some months it's 6%, and somewhere in between there. So you'll see that there are variations within the months on the revenue side. On the far right is fund balance, and that's a percent of our expenditures. We're currently at 11.7% year to date, and you can see how that compares to the previous 5 years that we've had in this report. So it's an easier number to look at rather than looking at what our actual dollar amount is, because that is quite misleading. It may be higher than it was last year, but our budget is higher than it was last year and much higher than it was 2 years ago. So it gives you a clearer picture. It also ties more to the board policy that requires a 6% fund balance as a minimum. Next. This is the actual only report I'm required to give you by state law. So I'll put it in there. It's a budget status report, and it basically tells you on the top part the revenue that we receive, broken down by each of those categories, so about $10.2 million. And the bottom part is the expenditures by program. So you have your regular instruction, your special education, your CTE program, your grant programs, all those different type of things, with support services being everything that's basically non-instructional in the district. And we've spent about 9.9 million. So with a beginning fund balance of about 2.3 million, we're currently at about 2.5 million, or 11.7% on our fund balance. The encumbrances you'll see do not exist in revenue, because we don't encumber revenue until we actually receive it. But there are encumbrances and expenditures, and that's where we've encumbered payroll costs, benefit costs, and the non-employee costs that we are aware of. Next. This is the other four funds that we report: capital projects, the student body, debt service, and transportation. And basically the way you read these, if you start at the bottom with the gray line, that's our starting fund balance at September 1. Blue is going to be revenue, red's expenditure, and the green is our current fund balance. And when I look at this thing, capital projects doesn't matter so much. We always carry over a fund balance. Debt service is basically an influx of money from capital projects to pay for a previous loan, and transportation vehicle fund is a purchase of buses, so not a lot to worry about there. The one I do have to look at more is the associated student body fund, because I noticed that the revenue is substantially less than their expenditures. So the question is it a timing issue? Do we expect more revenue coming in? Probably the change in where we are now in the spring. I don't expect there's going to be a lot. So it's something we'll have to pay attention to going into next year's budgeting process of where the fund balance actually is. It's still positive. We still have $66,000 in there, but it's less than the $98,000 they had at the beginning of the school year. Next. This one is just information for you. As we go into the budgeting process for 2021, these will be two of the factors that we will use. The implicit price deflator is going to be 1.6%. And that is what OSPI will apply to their salary funding calculations. So they will take last year's funded salary amount and increase that by 1.6%. The 2.5% is the allowable increase that we can have in our levy lid. So it increases it, and it's not substantial. It's a very small amount, but that's all that is. The one that really pays attention to is the implicit price deflator. As you remember, we have negotiated one of our contracts that has the IPD plus a percentage. So this is the percentage that is added to the negotiated amount. So we had originally thought it was going to be about 1.9% a couple months ago, but once the COVID-19 kicked in, it caused these things to actually decrease. So it's just an informational piece for you. Nothing you need to do with it. It's just what I will use in the budget process as we increase information in our revenue projections and those types of things. That's it. There's a lot more information that's on here. If people want to go look at our financial reports annually, monthly, back 5 years, SAO reports, etc. And there's another 30 screens of additional information if you want to go in and look at numbers.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate the new
And that's
format.
it, unless anybody has questions. Yeah.
The dashboard format, I think, was really an improvement. It made it much easier to read, and I appreciate the work that you put into changing that into that format. It was great. Questions from the board?
Not a question. I just want to express my appreciation for having that slide of the encumbered expenditures in there. I know that you always look at that, but having that available for us and for the public, I think, is a fantastic way to for us to keep an eye on finances at a glance. So thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, the hope was that it would make it easier to quickly look at this and get a better picture of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
So in terms of my report, I think it's pretty clear what I've been working on for the past several weeks. All of my emails to the community and to the staff pretty much explain what's been happening in our world. Julie, if you'd permit, we do have a couple of questions on our Q&A that I can address.
I would like you to do that. I was hoping you would address them because I think they would be best addressed by you.
Okay, so the first one is, how does the governor's stay home, stay healthy order affect administrators, educators, and other employees? So school districts are listed as an essential function. We are providing food service, generally providing childcare across the state, although our childcare needs at this point, we're asking again to see if there are folks, now that the governor has changed the allowable childcare, to see if we actually will have to provide some childcare, but that's yet to be seen. And we do have some employees on site. We have food service workers on site. We have bus drivers transporting food. We have custodial and maintenance staff, all maintaining appropriate social distancing, most of them working independently except for when they're preparing food, or we have 2 people in buses delivering food so that they don't have to be near each other, and they can hand the food off without getting close to people. So anybody who can work remotely is working remotely. Teachers are working remotely, though we have not closed the buildings to them. They are asked to refrain from coming in unless they need to. So they've been using classrooms and so on, but again, maintaining appropriate social distancing. So I hope that explains that in terms of everybody is an essential employee, everybody is working, and people who are unable to work, we have appropriate leave categories for those people, some of which were made available through the governor in terms of emergency leave. But for the most part, people are coming to work unless they are ill. So that is that question about how does the stay-at-home order pertain, because for us, we are an essential group. In terms of, we have an attendee saying, according to the 2017 census, Allen County has 83,159 inhabitants. We have 38 positive cases of COVID-19 in Island County. 24 of them are isolated in a nursing home. We've had 1 death, and the person was not on Whidbey Island when they died. How likely is it that we will get any cases involving faculty, staff, or students now that we've taken all of these precautions as opposed to if we hadn't? Well, I can say that I know of at least 1 staff member who actually does have a confirmed case. She is getting well. I talked to Island County this morning along with the other superintendents and heads of school across Island County. We have not reached the peak at this time. They do not know when we will reach the peak. So these precautions will continue as long as essentially the governor determines it should be so. Every indication I have, not to get anyone excited or upset, but every indication I have is that it is unlikely that we'll reopen April 27th. It's possible. They haven't determined that we won't, but at this point, that's how it's looking. That's the intimation at any rate. So we are gearing up educationally for the long haul. We are getting people trained. We are going to be doing distance learning in a manner, and that's, again, in process. So hopefully that answers that question. In terms of will this meeting be recorded for later reference, it is a webinar. It will go on our website like the audio used to go on our website. So yes, it will be recorded. Let's see. Comment about 52 participants is more than we've had during an in-person meeting. This is awesome. I encourage meetings to be done in this format or similar. I'm paraphrasing, basically perhaps less than $20,000. It could be something when we get back to normal to be discussed. Absolutely. We're getting very good at using Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars. So I suspect when we come through the other side of this, all of our staff will have substantially better skills than before we went into it, because necessity seems to be the mother of invention. How is the grading system going to work? So that is a work in progress. It looks like at this point, according to what we're getting from OSPI, we are going to go to a pass, no credit, which means you either pass the course because you've met the standards that are going to be laid out for that course, or you're not going to get credit for that. So as we go forward, we're determining that. One thing that I would say to all of our participants, especially if you have students, we want them as engaged as possible, and we're working to get to that place. Last week was, as you know, we used it as a snow emergency closure kind of week, and we're gearing up this week with our staff. So students will be fully engaged as we go forward. Is there discussion about not reopening this year? There is a discussion at the state level. Nothing has been determined at this point. There is some talk about even if, unless the curve flattened out and everybody felt really safe. The wondering at this point is, would people feel comfortable sending their children back to school? So that's yet to be determined. Those are the conversations that are being had. I have to say, I am, as superintendent, involved in probably 2 conversations a day at the state level and at the regional level with superintendents and with OSPI, and from time to time with the governor. So I'm telling you what I know at this point. I have no idea what will really happen. I can tell you that other states have taken the initiative to close longer than we are. We were the longest at one point. So it's yet to be determined. Comment here, it's wonderful that teachers are reaching out to their students and getting them going on at home learning. However, oops, it jumped around, sorry. It would be great to have principals and superintendent reach out to parents and students to make sure everyone knows how to access it. We're working on that. We are reaching out to every family. We're finding out what their technology needs are. We've been delivering Chromebooks as necessary. For some families, we may end up going to paper packets. We are working to get that to happen. How will pass, no pass affect the kids going to Snow Isle, those getting college credit with high school classes? So with pass, no pass, if you pass the course, you've passed the course. What we won't do is provide a grade, because we won't want to impact students' GPAs, essentially. We are looking to get our seniors graduated. We're looking to get them the credit they need to graduate. That's our first priority. In terms of the academics, you know, our first priority, really, this is a health crisis. So our first priority is that everybody is healthy, that we're feeding our kids, that we are providing childcare if we have to gear up to do that, and that we are providing for learning. So then we're looking at our seniors, making sure that we get them graduated. Again, I don't have to remind everybody, all 50 states are dealing with the same kinds of issues, some more seriously than others. There have been many deaths, so we're working on getting our kids to be academically challenged and getting them to pass their courses for senior year so that they can go on. At this point, I don't have answers in terms of the specifics, but it is a work in progress. I hope that answers most of our questions at this point. I don't see any others at this time. Happy to take any questions that I can answer. Hopefully, if I haven't answered it already, I've answered it in emails that I sent. No, we will not be providing. There's a question here. Will the school provide non-Chrome computers for students who need it? No, Chromebooks are what we're able to provide at this time.
Okay. Board, any comments or reports from our board members? Nothing else for the good of the cause?
I think I'm good.
Yeah. Everybody good? Damien, you're good?
Good. Just hoping that everybody stays safe and makes it through this. It's a difficult time, but I think we can all do it.
Well, I know we can do it. And I have a lot of confidence that we're going to come out of this thing and realize what a wonderful community we live in. Even though I know we know that, it's just going to be very reinforcing to everybody. So thank you all. And thank you, everybody, the 54 participants who joined us this evening. That's really terrific.
And if I would just like to add, Julie, certainly I've been responding to any emails. So if people still have questions after we end, I'm happy to answer them via email.
And I also noticed that the meeting is being recorded, and so it will be posted on the district website, correct?
Yes, just like the audio recordings are posted, this will be posted as a board meeting. Absolutely.
So right now, I wish we had all the answers. I wish we could solve all the problems, but we're living in turbulent times, and it requires all of us to be very agile and adjusting and flexible and kind and understanding. So with that in mind, folks, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and with wishes for all of you to be healthy and safe. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Meeting is adjourned.
Good to see you all.
So now what? Is it adjourned? Are the
It's adjourned.
participants done?